Alright, this lecture is going to be on cellular respiration and fermentation. First, key concepts are explain what cellular respiration is. You should be able to describe what happens during the process of glycolysis. And you should be able to name 2 different types of fermentation. Cellular respiration is a process that releases energy by breaking down food molecules in the presence of oxygen. Okay, there is the formula, the chemical formula. This is actually on your test, this formula. You have to be able to know what this formula is. So we have glucose that break, and oxygen is going to produce CO2, H2O, and energy. Energy is going to be in the form of ATP. What are the reactants? The reactants are going to be the things that are on the left-hand side. And what are the products? Those are the things on the right-hand side. Okay. How do the formulas of photosynthesis and cellular respiration compare? They're actually just mirrors of each other. So this diagram right here is actually on your test as well. You have to fill in what glycolysis is, and glycolysis is when glucose makes pyruvic acid. Okay, this pyruvic acid is then used in the Krebs cycle to make CO2. Chemical energy is taken to the electron transport chain, and that's where other ATPs are made. So all 3 steps here make ATP. Glycolysis makes 2 ATP. Krebs cycle makes 2 ATP, and the electron transport chain makes 32 to 34 ATP. The things that travel through to the electron transport chain, there's 2 different molecules that you have to know for your test. That is NADH plus and FADH2. So to copy this down, I would copy this down in your notes so then you can study it for your test. In each stage of cellular respiration, it captures some type of chemical energy available in food molecules, and it produces ATP. Glycolysis. Glycolysis occurs with oxygen present and without oxygen present. When oxygen is present, it goes to cellular respiration, and when it's not present, then it goes to fermentation. So the start of the process is when oxygen is available. First step in cellular respiration. Okay, it occurs in the cytoplasm outside of the mitochondria, and it breaks down glucose molecules into 2 molecules of pyruvic acid, which are 3 carbon molecules. It's going to use up 2 ATP, but it creates 4 more ATPs, so it has a net gain of a total of 2 ATP. Just remember that it gains 2 ATPs, that 2 ATPs are produced in glycolysis. Then glycolysis moves electrons to the electron transport carrier. Okay, the electron carrier is NAD+, which is like an empty taxi. It's ready for electrons to be in it. NADH is a vehicle that transports electrons, passing energy from the glucose, which is like a full taxi. So it's going to carry, NADH is going to carry this electron to the electron transport chain to make more ATP. Glycolysis only creates a small amount of ATP, but it does it so quickly that it can produce 1,000 of ATP in a millisecond. Next is the Krebs cycle, the second part. This occurs in the mitochondria. Pyruvic acid is produced in glycolysis and is passed to the Krebs cycle. Pyruvic acid is broken down into CO2, which is then released into the atmosphere when you breathe. And then that CO2 is also absorbed into plants, so then photosynthesis can take place again. The Krebs cycle produces a large amount of ATP and high energy electrons. Next, onto the electron transport chain. The electron transport chain takes NADH and FADH2 from the Krebs cycle and produces H+ ions to make water, as well as it takes ADP and adds a phosphate group to it, so then ATP is formed. So here's a different way of looking at it. So we have 2 ATP that are produced from glycolysis. Glucose makes pyruvate, which then helps coenzyme A, takes it into the citric cycle, which is also known as the Krebs cycle. 2 ATPs are produced here. and then it goes to the electron transport chain where 32 to 34 ATP are produced. Fermentation. Okay, fermentation releases energy from food molecules by producing ATP without oxygen. So there's no oxygen that is necessary for this process. There are two types of fermentation. First type is pyruvic or alcohol fermentation, and that's when pyruvic acid and NADH is going to produce alcohol, CO2, and NAD+. That NAD+ is actually recycled back through for glycolysis. The lactic acid fermentation, this happens in your muscles. And this is when pyruvic acid plus NADH produces lactic acid and NAD+. Again, that NAD+ is recycled back through for glycolysis. Lactic acid is produced in your muscles during rapid exercise that your body cannot supply enough oxygen to your muscle tissues. So when you start to get sore or really muscle cramps, okay, that's when there's too much lactic acid produced because your body does not have enough oxygen. That is the end of the slideshow for cellular respiration and fermentation. Have a great day.